Hello everybody and welcome back to another Malts and Meeples video here. Top 100 games of all time 2024 edition. I'm Petter and today we are hitting the top 50. So 50 through 41 for this part of the top 10. Thanks everyone for joining me, and hopefully you have fun with this, whether you're watching it live or catching it after the fact. I appreciate everybody who has been checking out these videos and has checked them out every year that I've done them. We're going to get kicked off here with number 50, Via Magica. This is one that I picked up because of the Dice Tower. Camilla on the Dice Tower is a fan of this game, and I thought the theme sounded fun, and it definitely is a really fun game, fun system, just of basically bingo. You're pulling out a chip. That chip, everybody is going to place it on one of their kind of gates. And you have multiple gates that you're trying to complete at once. And so you're placing that element on it. You can see the different elements on the cover there. But then when you complete stuff, you then trigger special effects that gives you points. And so really you're trying to complete as much as you can and go faster than everybody else is to get everything done. This is a light, easy to play game, but there are some really fun kind of decision points that you get to mess around with the game as well. So it's not too light, and oddly enough, it's not the only game kind of with the bingo mechanism in this section of the top 10. Next up at 49, and I think this one could go even higher, especially this is one that I'm considering streaming, is Too Many Bones. Too Many Bones is a campaign-esque style game, but more it's like a series of combats leading up to a big boss fight, and you're taking in these gear locks. You can see them on the front cover, these kind of creatures created for the game by Chip Theory Games. And the gear locks all have different abilities and powers. You can mix and match them together. You can decide what group you want to face off against the leader or against the boss. And then you're doing other combats basically just to progress as much as you can along your pathway to level up your characters, unlock new dice, unlock new abilities, beef up stats, stuff like that, so that when you do face off against the boss, you're ready. Of course, the boss is probably still going to be a tricky battle. I did a 4-player game at Gen Con this year of Too Many Bones, and it was an absolute blast. Just one of those games that's really fun. There is, I feel like with this game, a pretty steep learning curve, but once you get into it and once you kind of understand what your character can do, there's a lot of really fun interactions and abilities that you can access and use. Of course, sometimes it's just better to level up your stats as much as you can. So, that is my number 49 here, Too Many Bones. At 48, we're going to have a little rolling right here. One of them that honestly is to blame for the fact there are a million rolling rights now. Gone Sean Clever, or That's Pretty Clever in English. I've had two others on the list thus far, Clever Forever and Clever Haktrai, or Clever Cubed in English. And this is the original one. This uses the same mechanism that I've talked about before. If you didn't catch those videos, I'll cover it really briefly here. Basically, you have those 6 different dice. You roll them and you pick one of those dice to use. The numbers lower get kicked out of the pool. Then you roll again. You pick one of the dice to use. The numbers lower get kicked out of the pool. And finally, you roll and pick a third dice. Any remaining dice after that get kicked out of the pool. And so you get to do 3 things of your choice, but the dice you're leaving behind, other people are getting used at the end of your turn. And this game also has a lot of really fun combos with it. I have played this one a ton on the app. I really love it on the app. The only negative for me on the app is that I've played it so much, I now have a very specific strategy and kind of idea that I want to try every time I play. So I feel like there is a little bit of a limited replayability with it, but it's always still fun to go for the challenge and just see how good you can do, like how high a score you can get in the game, which is why That's Pretty Clever is still hitting the table regularly for me. So I believe that was number 47. At 46, we're going to have Dungeon Cart. This one's a new one to the list, and I need to play my copy that I got from backing the Kickstarter, but I love Dungeon Cart. This is, with a name like Dungeon Cart, you can guess what it's going for. It's trying to be Mario Kart in a board game. Now, it's taking the boss monster characters and adding them to it, and I'll say this about it, it's not going to be that hectic, frenetic pace that Mario Kart can be, but in terms of a racing game, it does a really good job of being a nice, pretty straightforward, simple racing game in terms of how you're driving, and sometimes that's just what you want. But depending on where you're at, you get benefits on each turn. So if you're in the lead, you're going to get less. And if you're further behind, you're going to get more that you can use. Basically spells and stuff that you can sling at your enemies, opponents, and spin them out, knock them off course. So it's very Mario Kart, very kind of interactive, in your face. You're always trying to mess with the other players so that you can catch up, and you're just trying to figure out strategically what makes sense, as well as then figuring out what gears you want to be in, because you can go a long ways on open track, but it's a big loop. So you have to figure out your cornering and everything like that, and or you can take a shorter inside route that might be grass and dirt. You might not be able to go as far, but if you're cutting off 10, 15 hexes in a game, sure, that might be enough. This is just silly, good, fun racing game. There's a lot of racing games that I love, and Dungeon Cart is up there for them. At 45, we're going to have the other bingo game, and I believe there are still more roll and write games on this section of the list. This is actually very dense in terms of roll and write games, but this is the bingo style one, Super Mega Lucky Box. You literally have what look like little bingo cards in a 3x3, and each turn somebody's flipping over a card. Everybody crosses off that number on one of their 3 bingo cards in front of them. But as you complete rows or columns, you potentially get bonuses, and those bonuses let you cross off other numbers. And the cards, like the numbers only go from 1 to 9, but on a card you have 2 of one of the sets of 3 numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8, 9, and one of the other ones. So you have to balance like what cards you're picking up, since you can't just lean into some numbers because they may not show up. You may never be able to finish that off, or you're going to find that you're not being able to use some numbers. Of course, they give you some good mitigation in there too, which is where kind of the strategic element of the game comes in, because you have these lightning bolts. Well, the lightning bolts adjust the number up or down by 1 per lightning bolt. So you can have really high numbers, or you can have really low numbers. So you can have a 9 that you're like, oh, well, I need a 1. Okay. 1 lightning bolt takes that 9 to a 1. And then sometimes, because of the bonuses, you can just really set up a great chain of combos. And that's what I really enjoy about Super Mega Lucky Box here. I believe at number 85. 84, another roll and write game. And this one, I could see this one climbing because I've been playing a lot of it on Board Game Arena. Cartographers is a great roll and write or flip and write game. This one, you're just kind of mapping out an area of land, trying to score the most points possible. I mean, you're mapping stuff out. It's not that thematic as to how you map it, especially when there are monsters that you put on the map. But with the monsters, that's one of the fun twists on the game. Monsters are negative points. So obviously, there are ways to counteract that. If you surround the monsters, they don't count as negative points anymore. So obviously, why wouldn't you surround the monsters? Like, you place it on there where they're going to be the most surrounded. Well, you don't do that because you don't place the monsters on your sheet. It is interactive in that you pass your sheet left or right, depending on the monster, and that player puts it on your sheet. And they're trying to figure out the worst possible spot to put it on your sheet so that it's the hardest for you to kind of cover up. The other really cool element about this is the system for scoring. So you do your map over 4 seasons. I mean, standard 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter. But how you score each round changes, and there's scoring for every single season. There's 1 scoring card for spring, 1 for summer, 1 for fall, and 1 for winter. And each round, you don't just score 1 of those, you score 2. So basically, the season you're in and the upcoming season. So spring and summer score in the first round, then summer and fall, fall and winter, and then winter and spring. So you're going over 4 seasons, you're scoring each thing twice, and you have to figure out how you want to split up that scoring. Because sometimes you might put a whole lot into summer. And that might be great, but you're probably not scoring huge on summer. In spring, depending on what's drawn, you could be. And then you score it in summer. But after summer, you're never going to score it again. So there's this constant kind of thought process that has to go on of, how do I want to score this? How do I want to spend my resources or use the cards given to me so that I can leverage it for potentially 2 different ones? That's one element that I really love about Cartographers, is that scoring element. And so it's just those couple little unique things that I really like. And then next up here, I believe this is 83, we have Res Arcana. Res Arcana is another engine building game. So I had Via Magica, magical kind of bingo engine building-esque sort of thing, a sort of game. And I mean, really, even Too Many Bones has an engine building element to it. But Res Arcana is pure engine building, and it's engine building with so few cards. You have your set of cards, and that's it. And you're basically figuring out how to utilize those cards and how you can play them out, spend resources, get resources, use those to buy potentially monuments, I believe it is, and then other things to really kind of kick through your cards and generate points, because that's all this game is you build your engine from the cards you have, get that engine up and running as fast as you can, and the first player to 10 points wins. It's a fast, just really thinky puzzle of a game where you can do a lot in the game, and you can get some really powerful combos. The first time you play the game, it tells you play with some starter decks, basically stuff that's balanced. But after that, you can just shuffle all the cards together, deal them out, and draft. And drafting, and I believe you get 8 cards that you're working with. I think it might just be 8, it might be 10. But you don't get that many cards, and so you're drafting them, and you're having to create your own synergies and kind of plan it out. And other people don't know what you're taking for sure, except you're passing the cards around. So they can see, if they remember what was there, what's now missing. But it's not going to be heavy on hate drafting. It's just like, it is better to build up your own engine than to have a dead card in your hand, because that's going to slow you down in a race to 10 points. So, really big fan of this game. It is very slick for a small box game and very thinky for a small box game. I believe this is 82. 42. 42, we're going to have a Railroad Ink challenge. I put the yellow box on here. This is really Railroad Ink challenge. Both colors of them, plus the mini expansions, the many expansions for them. It's just a fun roll and write game of trying to fill out a map the best that you can by creating connecting routes. And you have, 12 routes connected off the side of the board, 3 per side, and you want to get all of them connected, because the more you connect, the more points you get. The spots in the middle, you want to fill those spots in, because the more of those you fill in, the more points you get. You don't want to have just loose end connections just hanging out, because that's negative points at the end of the game. And that's primarily how the base game works. Then when you add in the challenge, that adds in 3 different challenges. And you have, I believe it's over 7 rounds. So in rounds 3, 4, and 5, you have challenges that you're trying to complete by then. If you do, you get a number of points. If you complete it after that, the further after that you complete it, the fewer points you get, but you're still getting more additional points. And I love kind of just the puzzle of trying to map everything together to optimize your scoring. There are a few scoring things that I haven't even mentioned in there. There's just enough that keeps this really thinky and makes it a good puzzle to figure out each time you play it, because you're just rolling dice and having to fit those dice onto your map. And for it being that, it is just a really clever, well done game and experience that I just love. And then, this might be 82. I think there's one after this. So 82 here, we have another new one to the list, Rebel Princess. In particular, this is the deluxe edition, but you don't need the deluxe edition, just whatever edition you can get of Rebel Princess. It's an amazing trick-taking game. If you're a fan of trick-taking games, I really highly recommend this one. This is one of my favorites that I've played, especially because it has a nostalgic element to it. Rebel Princess is basically Hearts, but it's Hearts with shenanigans. There are princes who are sneaking into the ball, and their goal is to propose to you. You don't want that. You're a rebel princess, so you're trying to dump off all your princes on other people, because you dump them off, they're the ones who get stuck with the points. Then there's also the equivalent of the Queen of Spades. There's animals, and I think it's the 7 of animals or 8 of animals is the Frog Prince. Frog Prince is worth 4 proposals. Definitely the worst one to get. But it's not quite as bad as the Queen of Spades is in Hearts. And that's one thing I really like about this, is it kind of lowers the stake of Hearts a little bit, and there's more room to come back. But this plays up to 6. There's a special rule that is put in play for each time you, each hand that you play. And you can play up to 5 hands, and it's basically lowest score wins. Well, those things can be like whoever is furthest from the card led on the trick of the same suit. So let's say I played out a 1 of animals. If somebody plays out the 9 or 10, I forget how high it goes, maybe 10 or 11. If somebody plays out the 11, they're going to win that trick. But if I play out, let's say instead I led the 11. If somebody plays out the 1, they're going to win the trick because that's the farthest away from mine. And it's a really interesting twist. Just every time there's a little twist that you have to think about and figure out how you play your hand each and every time so that it works and so that it's going to do what you want it to. Some of the things still remain the same, like you want to short suit yourself if you can, though there's always risks with that as well, because you're going to be loaded up on some other color if you get stuck in that, heaven forbid, especially once a proposal has gone. But there's all these fun different things. Everybody has their own princess, so once per hand of cards, you can activate your princess's power, and those powers all seem game-breaking, and they are game-breaking. Sometimes they're easier to use than others, but it's a really good, fun game that people are going to know, because at least if you're my age, you probably played Hearts growing up on the computer against the computer. I did that plenty of times. I got pretty good at it. And then the final one, yes, the final one, also new to the list, picked it up at Gen Con. Picked up this one and actually Rebel Princesses at Gen Con. But this is Rock Hard 1977 by Jackie Fox, the original bass player for the Runaways, lawyer, Celebrity Jeopardy champion, board game designer. Yeah, that's too much. But this is about being a rock star. This is going from garage band to the big stadium shows, all in, well, not that many rounds. And you're just trying to bump up as many points as you can, doing what's is exactly worker placement. But you have a single worker, and the board in each turn is kind of split into 3 sections. You have your daytime activities, which might be like working your job or recording or hiring crew, getting a record deal, working on songs, whatever it might be. Then you have your evening, and that's going to be like playing your gigs. That's where you're going to get in some money. There might be special events you can play at. And then in the evening, you're hanging out at all these different bars after the show, and getting these really kind of random but entertaining cards that give you potentially some ability, give you symbols that help you score points. You're doing some set collection on the side, and I love the writing on this because it's one of those things where I look at it and go like, this is just absurd, but also I believe that everything, not everything, but most of them at least, stem from stuff that actually happened in or Jackie Fox's life, around her life, or stuff that she's heard about, or yeah, kind of those legends around the 1970s big hair rockers. And there's way more going on in this. There's candy in the game. Candy. It's basically in a way to get more actions, but if you take too much candy, you might sugar crash and have to go to rehab. Or basically go to the doctor to get your candy, your sugar levels back under control. So obviously we know what they're talking about, but it's a fun little addition. It's all these things that are so thematic that make Rock Hard 1977 a really fun game. And each rocker has their own special kind of abilities. You get a job that is unique to you. You get a manager that's unique to you. So there's a ton of asymmetry, even with your goals really aligning oftentimes in the same area. So that is going to be my number 41, Rock Hard 1977. And with that, that is the full list for this time. I need to take the shrink off that box because that is really bright. But hopefully you had fun with this. I had fun. I always have fun making my top 100 list. I'm always curious to see what new games have really rocketed up on the list and which ones I could even see going higher. I think that Rock Hard 1977 is probably going to stick about around this range, maybe drop a little bit, which you would expect to happen as I play new games over next year. But Rebel Princesses is one that if I can play that a bunch, I think that one could climb even higher because I like trick taking, and that one just has something familiar but unique about it. But with that, thank you so much for listening and watching. Hopefully you enjoy this content. If you do, please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel as well. It's always appreciated. And yeah, let me know down in the comment section below, what is your favorite of the games from this list? And is there one in particular that maybe you haven't tried that you'd love to? Answer those two questions, and join me again next week, 9 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays for the next chunk. So 40 through 31. We are getting, there's still 40 games left to go. That's a lot, but we're getting down to it. As well as join me on the other nights that I stream. Actually, we stream is correct way to put it, because on Monday nights I do generally some smaller solo game right now, though that will probably be the night that I eventually start doing Too Many Bones or whatever campaign game I decide to do next. So join me on Monday nights for that. The starting time for that is a little bit more hit or miss. This last week it was 9, but generally I shoot for in between that 8 to 8:30 time range. And then on Friday nights now, my wife and I have started playing through Baldur's Gate 3. So 9 p.m. Central on Fridays, approximately. You can join us. And of course, all the videos are available for you to catch up on here on the Malts and Meeples YouTube channel. If you want to check out more of my content, obviously the backlog of videos is a great way to do that. But also nerdologist.com. I think did I say that already? I feel like I pointed for the link in the description below. And I have a podcast around Marvel movies, comics, TV shows, stuff like that. So if you love Marvel as much as I do, check out my podcast, 10 Minute Marvel. You can find it here on YouTube or wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcasts from. But with that, we'll see you next time.